I remember the day I met Mark as if it were yesterday. It was my 30th birthday, and I was feeling pretty good about where I was in life. I worked as a project manager at a tech firm, a job I loved, not just for the work, but for the people I worked with. That day, however, brought someone new into the mix. I walked into the office, coffee in hand, and found everyone huddled around a tall, dark-haired guy by the water cooler. That was Mark, the new guy from marketing. I remember thinking he seemed a bit cocky, standing there with a smirk, telling some story that had everyone laughing. "Hey, Emily, meet Mark. He's joining us for the big project," my colleague, Sarah, said, waving me over. Mark turned and flashed me a grin that caught me off guard. "So, you're the birthday girl and the brains of this operation. Nice to meet you, Emily." I rolled my eyes, not quite sure what to make of him. Brains, yes. Birthday girl, unfortunately, yes. Let's hope you're more than just the charming guy by the water cooler. He laughed, and I couldn't help but smile. "Challenge accepted," he said. But for all our bickering, we made a great team. It wasn't long before our late-night work sessions turned into late-night chats about everything and nothing. Mark had a way of making me laugh, even when the stress was piling on. One evening, as we were wrapping up, he stopped and looked at me, a serious look on his face. "You know, Emily, I've worked at a lot of places, but there's something about this team, about you, that's different. It feels like home." I remember feeling my cheeks heat up, not sure what to say. "Well, this team is pretty special. And you're not too bad yourself, I guess." That was the start of it all. The late nights turned into dinners, and dinners turned into weekends spent together. Our colleagues weren't blind. Whispers and nudges followed us around, but we didn't care. We were in our little bubble, happy. Even Mr. Henderson, our stern, no-nonsense boss, seemed to soften when it came to us. I remember the day he called me into his office, a rare smile on his usually serious face. "Emily, I've seen a lot of office romances come and go. But you and Mark, there's something solid there. Just don't screw up the project, alright?" he said, half joking. I laughed, feeling a warmth in my heart. "Don't worry, Mr. Henderson, we've got the project and this," I said, a feeling of contentment settling in. And then came our wedding day. It was perfect, with our families, friends, and colleagues all there, sharing in our joy. Mr. Henderson's speech brought tears to my eyes, not just for his kind words, but for the look of pride on his face. 2 whole years had whizzed past since I, Emily, and Mark said our I-dos. Living in the house I grew up in, now ours, felt like we were building something special, something ours. Mark's touch turned the place from a house to a home. His care and affection were in the little things, the way he'd leave notes on the fridge, the surprise weekend getaways, or how he'd dance with me in the living room to no music at all. Mark's recent promotion at work was a big deal. He came home that day, his grin wide, holding a bottle of the fancy wine we'd been saving. "Guess who's the new sales director?" he beamed, popping the cork. I jumped into his arms, laughing. "I knew they'd see how amazing you are. We need to celebrate." As we clinked glasses, I couldn't help but feel proud. Mark was more than just a smooth talker, he had a knack for making people feel seen, heard. But sometimes, I wondered if I was still fully in that picture. Mark's parents, Ted and Martha, were a hoot, loud, loving, and in our business more than I'd admit. Every Sunday dinner turned into an inquisition about grandkids. "So, Emily, Mark, what's the hold-up? We're not getting any younger, and we need little feet running around." Martha would nudge, her eyes gleaming with expectation. Mark would just chuckle, throwing a glance my way. "Mom, Dad, we're just savoring the newlywed life. Aren't we, Em?" I'd force a smile, my mind racing back to the little hesitations, the slight stutters when we brushed on the topic alone. One chilly evening, the house was quiet, the kind of silence that begs for tough questions. I found Mark on the porch, his eyes fixed on the stars. "Mark, can we talk?" "About us, about kids," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He didn't turn, just nodded slowly. Sure, M. What's on your mind? I hesitated, the words heavy on my tongue. Do you really see us starting a family? I mean, it's okay if you're not ready, but I need to know we're on the same page. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. I love you. You know that. And yeah, I want kids, but not yet. Work's crazy, and we've barely had time to be US. Let's just enjoy this, just a bit longer, okay? His words hung in the air, a mix of reassurance and something else, something like distance. I wanted to believe him, to dive into his embrace and forget my worries. But the way he wouldn't meet my eye, the way his voice wavered, it stuck with me. Dinners with Ted and Martha kept the question of grandkids on the table. Each time, Mark's answers felt more rehearsed, his smiles a bit strained. One Sunday, as Martha brought it up again, I watched Mark closely. You know, Mark, a little one would mean the world to your mom and dad. I prodded gently. Mark's fork paused midair. Yeah, I know, M. And it will happen, just, not right this second. There's plenty we gotta figure out first. Ted chimed in, his voice booming as always. Son, life's short. Don't keep putting off the good stuff for some perfect moment that might never come. Mark forced a laugh, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I hear you, Dad. But trust me, it's all about timing. It was a crisp Tuesday morning when my world began to crumble. I'd been feeling off for a while, a nagging fatigue that no amount of sleep could fix. Mark noticed too, his furrowed brows telling me he was worried, even if he didn't say it out loud. You sure you're okay? You've been looking kinda pale, Mark said one morning as we shared a quiet breakfast. I tried to brush it off with a weak smile. Just a bit run down, I guess. Nothing a good day's rest won't fix. But the rest didn't help, and deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The day I finally decided to see the doctor, I could feel Mark's tension, his usually steady hands fumbling with the car keys. The clinic was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the warmth of our home. Sitting there, waiting for test results, every second felt like an eternity. When the doctor finally called us in, his face was somber, his words a heavy blow. Emily, the tests have come back, and I'm afraid it's leukemia. The room spun. Leukemia? How could that be? I looked at Mark, expecting him to be my rock, but instead, I saw him stagger, his face the color of the whitewashed walls. Doc, there's gotta be some mistake. M's strong, she's healthy. This can't be right. Mark stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The doctor's eyes were kind but firm. I'm truly sorry. But we need to start treatment immediately. Time is crucial here. The ride home was silent, the air thick with unsaid fears and unshed tears. Mark was there, but his presence felt distant, like he was retreating into a shell I couldn't penetrate. The following weeks were a blur of hospital rooms, 4 drips, and the constant beeping of machines. I was fighting the biggest battle of my life, but it felt like I was fighting it alone. Mark's visits became sporadic, his excuses flimsy. Work slammed, M. You know how it is. But I'm here for you, always. He'd say, his gaze drifting to the clock more often than my eyes. I wanted to scream, to shake him and wake him up to our reality. But the fight was draining me, leaving me too tired for anger, too weak for confrontation. One evening, as I lay in the hospital bed, my body weary, my heart heavy, I caught a glimpse of the Mark I used to know. He sat by my side, holding my hand like he used to, but even his touch felt different. Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours? He asked, his voice low. I looked into his eyes, searching for the man I married. I need you, Mark. Not just the version of you that shows up and nods along. I'm scared, and I feel like you're not really here with me. He flinched, as if my words were physical blows. I am here, M. It's just, this place, the sickness, it's a lot to handle. But I'm not going anywhere, okay? His words were meant to comfort, but they felt hollow, rehearsed. The distance between us was growing, the connection we once had fraying at the edges. The hospital room, with its constant beeps and the sterile smell, became my new normal. But that day, something was off. It wasn't the usual unease of being sick, it was something deeper, a gut feeling that something was about to shatter my already fragile world. I was half dozing when I heard the door creak. Mark slipped in, his footsteps hesitant. I kept my eyes closed, feigning sleep, a part of me not ready to face another hollow conversation. But then I heard it, the soft buzz of his phone. His voice, usually so warm towards me, was different now, hushed and laced with excitement. "No, baby, she's asleep. I can talk," he whispered, and my heart froze. "Baby?" He never called me that. My breath hitched, and every fiber of my being screamed to confront him, but I forced myself to stay still, to listen. "Yeah, it's tough, but what can I do? Just waiting for this whole mess to be over," he continued, and I felt a sting in my chest. This whole mess? Was that what our life, our love, had been reduced to? I heard a soft laugh from him, one that used to be reserved for our inside jokes. "Oh, the inheritance? Yeah, it's all sorted. The house, the savings, it'll all be mine soon enough. Just gotta play the part a bit longer." Tears welled up in my eyes. The man I loved, the man I trusted with every piece of me, was plotting his future on my demise. I was nothing more than an obstacle in his path, a mess to clean up. The pain of the betrayal was sharper than any needle, any treatment I had endured. "But babe, let's not talk about that now. Tell me what you're wearing," he murmured, and that's when I felt it, the rage, burning through the fog of medication and despair. I wanted to leap up, to scream, to make him see the monster he had become. But my body was weak, my voice a mere shadow of its former self. All I could do was lie there, tears streaming silently, as I listened to the man I had vowed to spend my life with, weaving plans that didn't just exclude me, they relied on my death. After what felt like an eternity, he ended the call, planting a cold kiss on my forehead. "Sleep tight, Em. I'll see you tomorrow," he said, the deceit dripping from each word. The door clicked shut, and I was alone again, truly alone. The room felt colder, the walls closing in. I was stuck in a nightmare, and the one person who was supposed to be my partner, my protector, was the one holding the knife to my heart. The morning after that chilling discovery, I knew I had to act fast. My first call was to Mike, my lawyer, who'd always been more of a family friend than just a suit with a briefcase. "Mike, it's Emily. I need you here, pronto. We gotta change my will," I said, my voice firm, leaving no room for questions. He didn't hesitate. "I'm on it, Em. I'll be there today. We'll sort everything out." When Mike arrived, he didn't waste time with pleasantries. "All right, Emily, let's make sure everything you've worked for goes where you want it. No details needed, I trust you. Just tell me what you need." I laid out my wishes, ensuring Mark wouldn't see a dime of what I'd built. It was more than just securing my assets, it was taking back control. In the following days, I played my part well. Whenever Mark visited, I'd close my eyes, feigning sleep, but under my blanket, my phone was recording every word he said. His voice, once filled with love, was now dripping with anticipation for a life without me, talking to his mistress about how they'd splash my hard-earned cash. The act was almost perfect until the day Dr. Adams came with a heavy heart. "Emily, I won't sugarcoat it. Without a bone marrow match, we're looking at a few months at best." I braced myself for Mark's reaction, but what I saw was a tiny, fleeting smirk that he masked quickly with a shocked expression. That's terrible, document. "Are you sure there's no other option?" he said, his voice oozing fake concern. It was a performance worthy of an award, but I'd seen behind the curtain, and the show meant nothing to me now. Just a couple of days later, Mark's true colors shone through even more. "Babe, work's calling. Big project, out of state. I gotta leave for a month," he said, not a hint of hesitation in his voice. I looked at him, my heart hard as stone. Sure, Mark. Business is business, right? Have a good trip, I replied, my voice steady, giving nothing away. He left with a quick peck on the cheek, a gesture so empty it might as well have been a handshake. But as the door shut behind him, I felt a surge of strength. He was playing his game, but I was making moves too. With Mark out of the picture, the hospital room felt less like a cage and more like a quiet space for battle. It was just me, the nurses with their silent nods of encouragement, and Dr. Adams, whose steady presence was a beacon of hope in the sterile sea of white. Then, one bright morning, Dr. Adams burst in with a grin that stretched ear to ear. Emily, you're not going to believe this. We found a match. A bone marrow donor. It's a chance, a real chance at a new start. The words hit me like a ray of sunlight in the dark. Are you for real, Doc? That's something else. He nodded, his eyes twinkling with a mix of professionalism and genuine joy. It's as real as it gets, Emily. We've got to move fast, prep you for the transplant. It's not going to be easy, but you're a fighter. I've seen it. That news was the turning point. It wasn't just a thread of hope, it was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. But it wasn't just my health on the line. It was my entire life, a life that Mark had tried to steal away, piece by piece. The eve of the transplant, I lay there, the beeping monitors now a familiar chorus in the background. The road ahead was scary, sure, but each step felt like a step away from Mark's shadow, towards a life that was truly mine. Out of nowhere, my phone buzzed, Mark's name flashing on the screen, a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. Hey, Em. How's it going? Just wanted to check in. His voice, once a source of comfort, now felt like a distant echo. Just the usual, Mark. Battling on while you're off playing businessman, I replied, my voice sharp, leaving no room for his fake sympathy. There was a pause, a crack in his polished facade. I'm doing this for us, for our future. Just hang tight, okay? I almost snorted. Sure, Mark. You do what you have to. I'm doing what I need to do here. The call was short, his words empty. But I was no longer the Emily he thought he knew. I was stronger, ready to face the battle head-on. The day of the transplant dawned, a mix of anxiety and determination. The nurses were my quiet army, their words of encouragement my shield against the fear. You're the bravest person we know, Emily. You've got this, they said, their hands firm and reassuring. I nodded, feeling a newfound resolve. Thanks. I'm not just fighting for my life anymore. I'm fighting for the life I deserve. As the meds kicked in, drawing me into darkness, my last thought was clear. I was turning the page, stepping into a future where I was not just a survivor, but a conqueror. The operation was a blur of lights and distant voices, but when I woke up, the world seemed different. The air felt lighter, my breath easier. Dr. Adams's smile said it all before his words did. Emily, it's a success. You're on the mend. The news was a quiet victory, a moment so profound yet so personal. I chose to keep it close, a secret not ready to be shared. Not with Mark, not with his parents, not with anyone. This journey was mine, each step a testament to my will to survive, to thrive. The hospital room was silent, the air thick with the weight of unspoken words and hidden truths. It had been a month since Mark left for his so-called business trip, a month of solitude, of healing, and of planning. When he finally returned, there was no rush to my bedside, no urgency in his step. That's when I knew it was time to play my final card. I picked up the phone, my heart pounding, but my voice weak and trembling. Mark, it's time. I need to see you. I want to say goodbye and read my will. I whispered into the receiver, my words heavy with feigned sorrow. He was there faster than I expected, his eyes scanning the room, looking for the dying wife he expected to find. I lay there, frail and pale, a perfect picture of defeat. But inside, I was anything but defeated. As he approached with a forced look of concern, I murmured, "Mark, there are others coming. Witnesses for the will." His face dropped, confusion and fear mingling in his eyes. "Witnesses? What are you talking about, Em?" The door opened, and in walked Ted and Martha, their faces etched with worry, followed by Mr. Henderson, his brow furrowed in a mix of concern and curiosity. Mark's voice trembled, betraying his composure. "Mom, Dad, Mr. Henderson, why are you here?" Ignoring his question, I reached for the remote, my fingers steady, my resolve unwavering. The room fell into a hushed silence as I pressed play, and Mark's own words began to fill the space, each syllable a nail in the coffin of the life he had so carefully constructed. His voice, so familiar yet so foreign, spoke of waiting for my death, of the inheritance he'd claim, of the lies he'd spun. He laughed at the expense of his parents, bragging about the money he'd swindled from them under the pretense of my treatment, money he'd squandered on lavish escapades with his mistress. He boasted about the funds he'd taken from Mr. Henderson, all while planning a future that banked on my demise. The recording ended, and the room was engulfed in a stunned silence. Ted's face was red with rage, his hands clenched into fists. You're nothing but a snake. We raised you without denying you anything, and this is how you repay us." Martha's tears flowed freely, her sobs a testament to the heartbreak of a mother betrayed. Mr. Henderson stood, his expression steely, the disappointment in his eyes more piercing than words could ever be. "Mark, I trusted you, supported you. You've not only lost your job but expect a legal battle. You'll answer for every single penny." Mark's facade crumbled, his pleas for forgiveness, his attempts at justification, falling on deaf ears. "Please, it wasn't like that. I didn't mean," he stammered, but his words were lost, drowned in the sea of his own deceit. As the guards entered to escort him away, his cries and promises echoed hollowly against the walls of the room. The truth was laid bare, and the consequences were his alone to bear. The divorce papers had been filed, a clean cut from a man who turned out to be a stranger. "I want him out, Mike. Out of my life, and out of my finances. He's not getting a dime," I said with a newfound assertiveness, my lawyer nodding in agreement. "He won't, Emily. I'll make sure of that. We'll hit him with everything we've got." "Treason doesn't pay," Mike assured me, his words a solid promise. Ted and Martha, once in-laws now turned allies, had made their stance clear. "He's no son of ours, not anymore. We raised a boy, but somewhere along the way, he turned into a monster." Ted's voice was stern, a mixture of anger and disappointment. Martha, her eyes still tinged with the hurt of betrayal, added, "We're with you, Emily. All the way. He fooled us all, but no more. Your family, and we protect our own." Mr. Henderson, my ever-supportive boss, was a pillar of strength. "Emily, the moment you're ready, your job's waiting. And as for Mark, consider him gone. The company's already pressing charges for fraud. He'll pay for every penny he stole, and then some." Mark's downfall was as swift as it was complete. Fired from his job, his reputation in tatters, he was left to face the consequences of his actions alone. His mistress, the woman he'd pinned his hopes and dreams on, turned her back the moment his pockets turned empty. A fitting end for a man who thought he could have it all by stepping over others. As for me, I lay there, the pieces of my broken life slowly coming back together. The wounds were still fresh, but healing, a testament to the battles I'd faced and won. The road to recovery was long, but with each passing day, my strength returned, a silent nod to the resilience that had carried me through the storm. "Emily, you're a fighter. Always have been." Mr. Henderson's words echoed in my mind, a reminder of the journey ahead. "The company needs you, but more importantly, you need to take this time to heal, to rebuild. We'll be here, whenever you're ready." I smiled, the gesture no longer foreign but a sign of the peace I'd found. "I'll be back, Mr. Henderson. When I do, it'll be a fresh start, a new chapter." The room was quiet as I closed my eyes, the soft hum of the hospital a reminder of where I'd been and where I was heading. The journey had been harrowing, a test of will and strength. But as I lay there, a survivor of deceit and betrayal, I knew this was not the end of my story, but the start of something new. A chapter of healing, of justice, and of unwavering determination. The final act was over, but my story, my journey, was just beginning.